Looking at legislation, what do you think is the most likely liberty bill or liberty legislation to pass under a Trump administration?
I would probably say audit the Fed. Woo! Woo! Pretty routinely in the House. My dad started this 20 years ago, and it gradually grew to where 100 Democrats have been voting for it. In the Senate, it's more partisan, and our job, and your job to help me, is we need 8 Democrats to support it. Bernie Sanders did support it last time, but never would co-sponsor. He hasn't been a real advocate. He could be, but he needs to come on board. And I think Tammy Baldwin supported it, so we got 2, and we lose a couple of Republicans. So we probably have to get to 60 votes. But President Trump has said he will sign it. So I think that we have an opportunity, and we shouldn't give up on this opportunity when we finally have a president that says he'll sign it.
Next question comes from Charlie Kovach. It says, Dr. Paul, what was going through your head during the debate when Christie started talking about hugging the victims of 9/11 and you rolled your eyes?
Am I allowed to use profanity?
Yeah! Hell yeah!
I'm a new person and think that I should not use violence against him. And that the odds might be against me, considering. But I think it's an important debate. It is an important debate. But it's interesting, in the aftermath of that, some said that I came off as being too angry towards him. And that's a difficult thing when you try to present yourself to the public. You have to be for what you're for, but if you appear too angry, then you turn off some people in the middle. And I don't know what the truth of that is. I look back and I was happy with what I said, but some of my staff thought I may have been too harsh on him. But the other hard part from the person running's perspective is there's a lot of people. And there were 16 people on the stage, and I was on the periphery of it because there weren't enough of you voting for me in the polls. And so I was, it wasn't your fault. There's not enough of you. So I was on the periphery, but in order to try to interject, you have to be somewhat aggressive. So in the very first debate, my staff told me for 3 weeks, don't challenge Trump. And so what did I do in the first question? Challenge Trump. But the reason I thought is I thought I could stand there for an hour. You can stand there for an hour and not get a question, and you're not part of the debate. And so I tried. It didn't necessarily work, but I still would probably do it again, simply because he was getting all of the attention. He got all of the attention. You had to break your way in and hope that you had a chance. But the other difficult thing about the debate is there would be debates where everybody was happy. My whole team was happy, I was happy. We thought we made good points, challenged people on points where they were inconsistent. And then all the pundits afterwards would talk about Donald Trump or some other candidate. It was hard to break in, and I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I think it's just hard. You got to figure out how to break into that big group, and not an easy decision. But looking back, I'm excited that we did it. I'm excited for the movement, hopefully, that continues on from it as well.
Next question comes from Trey Miller. Dr. Paul, what's your favorite book and why?
Probably Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. It's not really a political book, but it's a book about someone thinking basically that there is no God, so there's no rules, and anything is permissible. Sort of a 19th century kind of idea. Then he decides to act on it, and when thinking anything is permissible, he does something heinous. He commits a murder. Then the rest of the book is about him reconciling himself with the guilt that comes from the action. And I think that that's a very internal struggle, and not many of us are going to go out and murder someone, but we sometimes think there is no right and wrong. We sometimes think we can do anything we want, and then do we have a conscience? And that's not something I'm here to teach you about. It's something everybody will have to figure out on their own. But I think it's well worth reading if you haven't read it.
Next question comes from Dale Anderson. Dr. Paul, will Trump and Congress balance the budget, or is it all talk?
Has there been talk about balancing it? No, I think that's one of the unfortunate things. I think there have been some good things that have happened. I think he's exceeded my expectations with his cabinet. The Gorsuch pick for Supreme Court is very good. We've repealed regulations for the first time in 20 years, but debt is not a high priority. Now, Mick Mulvaney's the budget director. He was a supporter of mine in the presidential election. He is a fiscal conservative. He's someone who understands that it's not just welfare spending, it's also military spending as well. It's the combination of both that is leading to the deficit. But he was sort of put in a box in the sense that Trump said, we're going to massively increase military spending, and we're going to pay for it by being fiscally conservative and slashing a lot of other stuff. So he did. He slashed a lot of other stuff to compensate for increased military spending. But to my mind, we spend more on the military than the next 10 countries combined. It's not like we're in a position of weakness. If we're in any position of weakness, it's because we are overextended where we are around the world, but it's not for lack of money. We've doubled the amount spent on military in the last 15 years since 9/11. So I don't think it's a lack of money, and I think it's probably a risk toward national security to keep spending money and go further into debt. I don't think there's a sufficient enough alarm in the White House, and my prediction as to what will happen is they want more military spending, and then they offer these cuts. All of the cuts will be wiped out. And in fact, they ought to do the opposite. The left will want increased domestic programs in order to get what they want. So the right wants more military and the left wants more domestic programs. They'll both get what they want. That's always what happens. If you look back at every budget battle for the last 40 years, it has been compromise, which is another reason why compromise is not always a good thing. The right and left always compromise for more spending. And so the deficit will go up, and we'll see what happens. But I don't have a great deal of expectation that we're going to bring the deficit down.
Okay, next one comes from Real Dylan Allman. Dr. Paul, who is your favorite founding father?
Favorite founding father? That's a tough one. Most people would say Jefferson, and I think if my dad were asked, he'd probably say Jefferson. And I was always a great fan of Jefferson. But over time, as I've looked through and seen a lot of the debates of the Constitution, I've become more appreciative of Madison as well. I think that if I were, but then I don't want to completely discount people that walk in the liberty movement, sort of discount like Adams or his family. Because Adams and his family were for bigger government, less, they were less libertarian in that sense, but they were also a family outside of time in the sense that they were stronger in their opposition to slavery at an early stage. John Quincy Adams, one of the most famous quotes from about non-intervention or less intervention comes from John Quincy Adams. So I tend to, as I look back in history, if you look at people who stood against the tide of history in their particular lifetime, and I think the Adams family did on slavery, to a certain degree. They were imperfect as well, because most of the founding fathers went along with an imperfect document that allowed for it. I think that sounds pretty much like a good Washington answer. I didn't answer the question.
The last question I have for you, so the theme of today and these summits we've been doing is to make liberty win. If you had to give advice to the activists out here in just figuring out, what is the best path, or just any general advice you'd give to the young people, what's the best way to make liberty win?
Today, you've already shown that you're extraordinary. Most of your parents don't even vote. Not yours particularly, let's just say on the average. Half the people in the United States are not registered to vote. Half the people who are registered to vote don't vote. People who show up in the primary, sometimes 20% of those who are eligible to vote. How many show up and actually get interested in ideas and maybe helping candidates? 1 in 1,000. I mean, a really, really small number. So the fact that you've shown up and given some of your Saturday to listen to, boring old dudes from Washington, shows that you're interested in the future of your country. And so you can have a great deal of impact. It isn't just your vote. People often say, oh, if I voted, just throw it away, who cares? My one vote doesn't count. Your activism counts probably 1,000 times more than you vote. I'm still for voting as well, but your activism, if you get involved, I can tell you that there were a lot of young people that came to mind to help me in my primary in 2010, and it was a huge force. I'll never forget walking to one rally on a little square, and there were 100 young people walking with me, all carrying signs. It not only buoyed my spirits, but it demoralized my opponent. He was like, who are all these people? So, no, keep at it. You can have an effect. And liberty, every generation has to defend liberty, and that'll be your job, the next generation.
Another big round of applause.